All right. Welcome to the UCFsports.com preview of this Saturday's game against Cincinnati. We got a big home game down at the Bounce House, 3:30 on ESPN. I'm excited about this one. I think every UCF fan kind of, has fond memories of certain games. And I know everyone goes back. I know the last appearance that Cincinnati made was in 2020. That doesn't really count in my mind just because of limited stadium, but everyone remembers that 2018 game. So I know everyone's getting excited. So I am honored and privileged tonight to be joined by JT Smith. He is the publisher of Front Office News. He has been covering Cincinnati since the Tuberville area, or prior to that. How long have you been around, JT?
Yeah, at least Tuberville, like far as legit coverage, like with legit sites and everything. Tuberville, I think it was 2016, maybe 15. They were down in Paul Brown Stadium, now Paycor, because they were redoing Nippert. So that was my first year covering games, man. It was crazy.
And so Tuberville, I remember that viral video. Like, he was getting yelled at by the dudes that are above the end zone. Yes. And he's like, "Get a job. Go and get a job." Or what was he saying? They were yelling at him like, "Why don't you resign?"
Yeah. So it was funny, man, because it was like that game, like that last year of Tuberville was same thing. They start off decent first quarter. By second quarter, they run out of gas. And then in the second half, they're going to get just curb stomped. So they were getting curb stomped. Nothing faint, nothing, you already got your recap ready. You're ready to say what they need to improve on, what they did well for a quarter, etc. And my guy, he was the first person to put me on TV, Keenan Singleton. He actually was down there because it was nothing. It might have been 10,000 people in the stands.
Okay.
And so he just was like, records it because he sees them just ribbing him, right? And then he just records it, and Tuberville takes the cheese and goes off on him and says, "Go to hell, get a job." And that it goes viral, and it went so viral, and the Bearcats were so bad that year that it forced their hand. You know what I mean? Because they were going to let him ride it out because he
was fired with a few games to go. Is that kind of what happened? They didn't wait till the end of the year.
I think they may have waited to the end of the year, but he had like this stipulation, like if he was fired like a couple days later, he would have gotten like $500,000 less or something like that from his buyout. But they fired him before because that went so viral that they just was like,
they had no choice. That's a good point. I was going to ask you about Luke Fickell coming. That's a good segue to talk about it. Yeah. I mean, I kind of vaguely remember when it happened. I was familiar with them because he was the interim head coach at Ohio State. That was when Tressel got canned, and that was before Urban
got in trouble. Remember Tattoo Gate?
Yeah.
So he got that year, and then they kind of were like, I don't know if Tressel was technically canned yet, but it was kind of like a limbo.
I knew about his Ohio State ties. I knew that. I knew he had a little bit, and he was always kind of regarded as one of the top assistants in college football, and so it was going to be a matter of time before he got a head coaching job. So he gets the Cincinnati job, prior to 2017? I feel like that makes sense. 2017 for him?
It might be 20. Man, I feel bad.
Because I know he was talking about, I was watching his press conference. 70. He was talking about that first game he had with UCF, and they called it after 3 quarters because of weather. Yeah. So I think that was his first year. So what was it? It was. So what are your kind of memories of when he came in? Obviously, anytime you hire a coach, I'm sure everyone's excited. Like, this guy's going to, take us to the promised land. I know there were successful head coaches at Cincinnati prior to Tommy Tuberville, so I know expectations were high. But what do you kind of remember? And is it safe to say that Fickell has surpassed any expectations that anyone possibly could have had back in 2017?
For sure. So everybody knew Fickell from Ohio State. He played there. Knew he was a long-time assistant coach. Knew that he, coached that 1 year when Tattoo Gate and all that stuff happened, and it depleted the team. I think he was 6-6 as an Ohio State coach. He was very young then. But the crazy thing is, like, far as pure fandom, he wasn't the guy everybody wanted.
Yeah. So who was the guy? Was there like a hot name on message boards and Twitter? Like, do you remember?
The hot name, I want to say was the guy from West Virginia. That's Coach West Virginia. Because wasn't he at like Central Michigan or something like that?
Okay, are you talking about the guy? We're talking about Holgerson that went
Not
to
Holgerson.
Neil Brown. No, the
Neil
guy
Brown.
that's in there now, Neil Brown.
Neil Brown. He
was he
the hot
at
name.
App State? Where was he before?
I can't
Appalachian
remember.
State, maybe?
I don't want to lie. My bad. I should have looked that up before I came on. But he was the hot name. They wanted him, and then the guy at Minnesota.
Okay.
The current Minnesota coach.
Okay.
Those
he was at Troy. He was at Troy. That's right. Okay. Neil Brown was at Troy.
Neil Brown. My bad.
Okay. And the other one was the crazy guy from Minnesota, PJ Fleck, the guy that's always like Mr. like row the boat, the boat guy from Minnesota. Okay.
Yeah, Fleck was number one. I think everybody wanted Fleck, and then I felt like
he was probably at Western Michigan maybe at that point. I'm not sure if he Yeah, that's what you're thinking of. Yeah.
Yep. So Fleck was the guy everybody wanted for sure, and then Brown. And I think Fickell was kind of like, far as the fans in general.
Okay. Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I don't think that's what it was for the
administration,
the brass administration.
Right.
But I feel like when he got hired, they were like, oh, just Ohio State guy. You know how it is. UC Ohio State up here can be touchy.
Yeah, I think UCF fans can
it's probably like Florida,
a little bit like that. Yeah, we know what you're talking about.
Yeah, so it can get touchy, and then if people don't like, what makes fans great is fans will show their pure fandom and just wig out, not really think about like, not have a clear thought when they talk about this type of stuff. You know what I mean? So they were ticked off. But then when I went and I was like, man, he's been to Ohio State. He knows the area. Tuberville did a terrible job at recruiting this area.
It's a good. I mean, that's a great area for recruits. I know people talk about Florida, Texas, whatever, but I mean, Ohio and some of those areas. Yeah,
it's top 5. Like if you look at people in the NFL, people in other places, top 5. It maybe per capita is probably as high, but it's not as big as a Florida. Right. Texas, of course, maybe even California. But in general, Michigan State, you remember when they kind of just blew up and made it to the playoff, one of the first playoff, they're stealing all the kids from Ohio.
Okay.
Kentucky is being decent now because they were plucking kids from Ohio. Now they have a good, pipeline now because they're getting top quality kids from Ohio. Iowa State, another team that was a doormat, started getting kids from Ohio, and now they are relevant. You know what I mean? Like sometimes they can be a top tier team, and that's based off of, Ohio State going to such another big level that it's a lot of low hanging fruit because they're national now. They can go to California, they can go to Texas, they can go anywhere. They can go to Alaska if there's a kids over there, right? And they can get them. They can get a top.
So is that what Fickell did? Did he obviously he personally is recruited there? Did he get his staff? Was his staff Ohio ties or at least Ohio recruiting ties? Is that kind of how it developed? Is that sort of how everyone started to get on board? Were there some early recruiting successes that people could definitely see where things are going to be building upward?
Yes, like he got Michael Warren, got him. He was going to go to Toledo, his hometown. One of probably one of the highest as far as yards and touchdowns back. Has a lot of history. Didn't make it in the league. I think he got a couple practice squad shots or whatnot. Didn't do as good as he did at UC, but turned him. I mean, he ran for almost 1,900 yards. I think like 20 touchdowns or something like that in one season. It's crazy. But he started recruiting. Like literally, you have all these kids, going to Ohio State, going elsewhere, and they're not even looking at UC. Like you have kids on this team that if Fickell doesn't come, UC is not even an option. Like, and I've interviewed them. I know you've interviewed a lot of kids as well, but I've interviewed them. They told me, I'm like, hey, if Fickell wasn't here, would you be on the team? No. And you know what I mean? Like it was an option. They would rather go to Illinois or somewhere else.
So how is the dynamic change in terms of, and maybe it's even changing again with Cincinnati going to the Big 12. Who is the recruiting competition? Who are the schools that you're continually going up against? And has it changed? Has it changed in the last couple of years? And then the Big 12 news is, Ohio State's going to get theirs. I mean, I know how that goes, but is it Big 10 schools? Is it Big 12 schools? What are the teams that you kind of knock heads with the most, you think, in recruiting?
Recruiting, man, that's a good question. I would say mid-tier SEC schools, Big Ten schools, and then I feel like a couple now that the news is broke. I feel like it's been a few kids that have had UCF on there.
Yeah.
Can't think of the names in general, but I know.
But there was one kid I remember. This was years ago. It was one of the top receivers for you guys, Khalil Lewis.
Okay, yeah.
He was a guy that UCF wanted. I'm trying to remember what class he was in. It was when Frost got here, or maybe it was before Frost. I can't remember, but he was a guy that I remember head to head. That you see that a lot with UCF in Cincinnati because he was from Florida.
Yeah,
and he ended up going to Cincinnati.
Yeah, he had a pretty good career here too. Pretty solid. So, But yeah, man, it's changed. You see, like, I mean, I think these guys, sometimes you have, you might see top 4. We're in there with Georgia and those LSU. I feel like LSU, Georgia, Bama, I think got a tight end. They had him for the 2022 class, but they flipped him. They flipped the kid.
Yeah.
Remember, did you ever see that funny, that weird 360 with Brian Kelly?
The recruiting video, like the thing that spins around. Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
That kid he was a UC commit, and then at the end, the SEC schools swooped in and got him.
You know how it goes with the collectives and all that stuff.
He's pretty good. They got him. Yeah.
But how have you seen it as someone who's now? Are you from Cincinnati? Did you grow up in the city, or are you? How long have you kind of been in the city of Cincinnati?
So I'm an Ohio kid, but I'm from Dayton, which is.
Okay. Was it an hour away?
Yeah, hour away. But I've lived in Cincinnati for 20, 21 years.
Okay, now, so I mean, obviously you got a pulse on the environment. Sure. I mean, I actually grew up and still am a pro Cincinnati fan between the Reds and Bengals.
Okay. Nice.
But how have things changed in the city just in terms of the support and the attention? And obviously Cincinnati's always been there. It's always had a great basketball program and the football program. I mean, there's been Brian Kelly. I mean, there's been I know some great teams, but now with Fickell and the consistency and keeping the focus on kids from Ohio and going to the playoff last year, now going to the Big 12. I mean, are you seeing the fan support even get that much bigger, and is more buy-in from the community? Like, how has that changed maybe in the last few years?
Dude, it's crazy. It went from, man, I was talking literally to the AD, literally to the AD the game against Indiana. I literally had like a 5-minute conversation. Like, dude, look at this, because he came. How long is Cutting?
He's a young guy. I'm thinking of the old guy that went to the other school, but because I saw the video with the game ball the other day with Fickell. Yeah.
So like literally, I'm talking to him like we're just basking in the crowd. Like, this is crazy. But essentially, I remember a senior night where it might have been 75,000 in the crowd. A senior night, literally 7,500. My bad.
It's 7,500. Okay, 7,500.
My bad. That sounds crazy.
7,500. Okay, gotcha.
My bad.
Gotcha.
Sorry, it's late. No, I'm just playing. But 7,500, literally, and that might have been whatchamacallit last year, Tuberville's last year, and then
Senator Tuberville.
Yeah, Senator, which is crazy. we could be that could be a whole podcast.
I know we're not going to go there. We're not going to do politics. Okay.
No, it's straight to football, man. Football. All right, but literally, you go from that. They sold out a Kennesaw State game this year. Just think about it. Not a big name. They sold out Kennesaw State. And that's what we were talking about. Like, dude, they really sold out Kennesaw State. Like, I never thought I would ever see a Bearcats team be able to sell out a game like that. Yeah. Ever. I never thought I would see it. And I saw it in the flesh. It was crazy.
So what was, for a guy who's covered Cincinnati, grown up there, obviously got a lot of ties, like, what was last season like, just to experience that? I mean, I know there was high hopes going into the year, after 2020, but now we got full stadiums again, and they had a path, with the Notre Dame game. You feel like, well, if they win that one and they run the table, I mean, things had to happen along the way with other teams losing, but it was a blast for me in 2017, and UCF, that was the undefeated year, go to the Peach Bowl and won the national championship after that. But, that was a blast. That was a lot of fun to experience, going to that stadium and stuff. So just for you, for someone who's been around, like, how fun was that experience of a 2020 run and Cincinnati's run to the college football playoff?
Man, it was great. It was surreal, just like even as a person that covers the team, but just as a person that been, I saw when I could just literally get out of my dorm room, be like, oh, they're playing live football today. Okay, I can go watch it. I don't have to go wait in line. I can just roll out of bed, and I would be probably sitting in the third row, right?
Yeah.
Watching Gino sling the ball around the yard, throw for 400 yards. I think I saw Big Ben play, and when he was a sophomore, I think they both threw for 400 yards against each other.
Yeah, we had Big Ben coming down to UCF was in the MAC back in the early 2000s. We had Miami, Ohio. I mean, Ben Roethlisberger about killed UCF one day down there. Dude. I gotcha.
And it was before before everybody kind of understood like this dude is like a super pro, you know what I mean?
Yeah. The MAC was good though, man. 20 years. They got there were some quarterbacks in that league, man.
They did. Yeah. So I saw that live, and I'm telling my friends, I'm like, man, nobody's talking about this dude, but we're going to hear about him soon. So boom, boom, fast forward, not off the field stuff, he's Hall of Fame, etc. But from seeing that, to be able to literally just get up out of my dorm room and just not even like plan to go to a football game to see where it is now is like crazy to me. And then just the experience, because they knew, especially like with a couple of the super seniors staying, like with Dez saying he was going to come back for a senior year, everybody automatically knew like they got a chance. Yeah. And you had, Myjai Sanders say he was going to come back for his senior season, where they both would have been drafted probably around the same spot they were drafted at, maybe a little bit higher, who knows, lower or higher, who knows, but they still were on the boards before. And for them to say they were coming back, everybody's like, oh, this can be special. And then seeing the schedule, you knew it could happen because they had the ingredients to be able to do it. And then only thing that scared me is I thought because of how bad the conference was. The conference was solid last year, but it's not, the P5. So I thought they would get skipped, and they tried to skip over them. If it wasn't for the Big 12 slipping up at the end, I believe they would have been 5, and they just would have kept them there. Yeah. But the team, they had 9 people that was drafted. It was pretty dope just to experience it, go to most of the games, talk to the guys, just see how their success on and off the field. It was pretty cool. So,
did you get a chance? Did you go to the playoff game yourself? Or?
I didn't, but my contributor did. So like essentially, they allowed us like one slot, and then my photographer went too. So I was like, you go ahead and go, and then knocked it out. He had a blast.
Okay.
So yeah, we had access. Yeah, we had access.
Okay. So that was just, I know that had been a great experience, and so just kind of shifted a little bit, and then we get the Big 12 news. Last year, I guess it was about early September and stuff. I know it's going to be effective here next summer. We just had Brett Yormark, Big 12 commissioner, come visit UCF yesterday, and so I know he came to Cincinnati. I think I remember watching you guys' video. Like, I don't know if it was you that filmed it, your partner there, but I remember watching that when he did a Cincinnati tour. So just how excited, I guess, or obviously everyone at UCF is ecstatic about that. Just kind of feel like you've been in the minor leagues a little bit, so to speak. I know Cincinnati felt like they were, in the Big East before and kind of were relegated with, the BCS bid was taken away, but you just, you see where college football is going, and you got to be at that level. And you look at, TV contract and all that stuff. It's going to be, it's going to be a lot more competitive, on a national basis. So just how excited is everyone, I guess, right now that Cincinnati's going to the Big 12?
Dude, man, you teed it up perfect, because like the Bearcats, they went from being in the Conference USA, which at the time was cool. Then they started coming up. You taste it, like you got the cake, you get to taste it for a couple years. You get a couple bites at the apple in the Big East, even though people were kind of slighting the Big East. Basketball was amazing. Basketball, fire. Football, it was kind of like the Big 12, you know what I mean? Now where people it's 45 to 42, but they had a lot of pros come out here. And then you get it taken away to this new conference that everybody's like, they just make it up, and it's turned out to be solid. But at the same time, it's such a big gap, on a money gap, where SEC is making over 50 million a year. The Big 12, high 40s, Big 10 making over 50, and then they got new deals coming in that's going to pay them XYZ. The ACC making probably low 40s, high 30s, and then you're making 7 to 8, and then if you get to a big bowl, the AAC, it is crazy. So the thing is, which is like for me as a person that covers the team, it's great just because now we have like you're probably experiencing the same thing where people are it's more of a buzz to what you're talking about.
Yeah,
Or
I feel like I know what you're gonna say,
yeah,
but go ahead.
yeah. So like when you're talking to somebody and you're talking about Tulsa, everybody's like
Yeah,
Tulsa, right? Even if
yeah.
they've been pretty good, they have a couple people that makes it in the
Oh
NFL.
yeah.
Starting left tackle for the Dallas Cowboys and certain stuff. But my dad, avid Buckeyes fan. You have to kind of pick in my household, right? When I was younger, it's Michigan or Ohio State. So that's neither here nor there. Bearcat fans that get ticked off of me about that, but I'm not a Michigan fan. But at the same time, I had a conversation, and my dad is the reason why I'm probably covering sports now. I'm talking to him about this Tulsa has this receiver and he's pretty good and blah blah blah, and it looked like I was talking to a wall. And I've never spoken to my dad about sports, and he'd not give me any kind of reply or just like was disinterested. So it was crazy, and I was just like, you know what? As sad as it is, like people don't care about a lot of these teams, and that's not a slight to these teams. They have some of these programs are very good, but just think about it. Even without Texas and Oklahoma, next year you got Houston, you got Oklahoma State, you have Texas Tech, you got all these teams, Baylor, who hold weight. Where if we're talking about these teams, it's going to mean something, and it's going to make these games are going to be so much more lively.
Yeah, the best thing is that these are all schools that have fans that care.
Exactly.
I mean, fans you can find online, fans you can interact with on Twitter, podcasts and sites you can go find and talk to people, because you know how difficult it can be sometimes. And that's the great thing, because I mean, there's a lot of passion in the Big 12, and frankly, there's I know there's a big Big 12 Pac-12 kind of rivalry with TV contract and maybe some poaching going on with Yormark talking like that, but there's a lot of passion in the Big 12 that just it's right up there honestly with the SEC and the Big 10. I don't think it's there in the ACC, not with every school in the ACC and not with every school in the Pac-12. I truly think the Big 12 is the number 3 conference. You could maybe say competitively on the field. I would back that, maybe the number 1 conference in men's basketball, but definitely right up there with passion in every single. You're going to go to places like I've been everywhere in the AAC. I've been to pretty much all the games for UCF, home and away. And you go to Tulsa and there's like literally 1,000 people in the stands. You go to Temple, there's 1,000 people in the stands. You go to USF. I mean, I know that's UCF's rival, but I mean they've fallen off a cliff in the last 5 years. And there's maybe there's more. Maybe it's 50-50 the last time UCF and UCF. So it's going to be fun to go to places that actually care about the football teams. I can't tell you the amount of times I've gone to a place and like you're checking into a hotel at Tulsa or Philly. Oh, what are you here for? Oh, I'm here for the football game with Temple. And they're like, okay. They're playing like, they have like no idea there's a football game going on. And for some reason, when you go into Stillwater and Lubbock and these places, they're going to know what's going on Saturday. So
for sure. I
cannot wait for that. So let's kind of shift and talk about this year's Cincinnati team. Obviously, was such a great, fantastic year making the playoff. You have 9 players drafted in the NFL. Things are still on a roll for Cincinnati this year, 6-1. The only loss was the opener on the road to Arkansas. Lost that one 31-24. Then Kennesaw State beat them, obviously. Beat the real Miami, who I like to see, the original Miami. I'm not going to say Miami of Ohio because we don't say Miami of Florida. They're the original Miami University, the rival of Cincinnati. Obviously beat those guys, beat Indiana. And then you've won your first 3 AAC games between Tulsa, 31-21, narrowly edged South Florida 28-24, and then narrowly edged SMU on the road 29-27. So while everything's looking good, ranked number 20 in the country, 3-0 in the AAC, how would you kind of assess Cincinnati to this point? Obviously they're still there. I mean, you still got to say they're the favorite to win the league, but not really knocking the cover off the ball in terms of dominating wins.
Yeah, they are interesting, man. I've talked to a few people just like offline just about they're super talented for sure. I mean, maybe not as talented as far as experience as last year. Of course, you got 9 people get drafted. You're going to have a drop off. But this team how can I say this? Like, far as like rankings, a lot of these kids or these young men probably are ranked higher than a lot of the guys that were drafted per se. For the most part, which sounds crazy.
I feel
So
like
that
UCF's gone through that, where some of the top NFL guys were these like 2-star recruits or
yeah,
these guys
yeah.
that were overlooked. I know what you mean.
Yeah, so it's like then they just got there and just grinded, and the weight program and just the coaching took them to another level. Or maybe because like a guy like Sauce Gardner, who's possibly going to be defensive player, rookie of the year. I mean, he just was light. Like I had a friend as soon as he signed with the Bearcats said, "Man, you guys got to steal. He's going to be a star." And he told me that before he even played a game, just because he was probably like 155 soaking wet. So a lot of the bigger schools like the Indianas and Michigan and Michigan States wouldn't touch him because of his thinness. And he comes to UC, puts on weight, and you see what happens. So now he's looking very, very good in the NFL. But this team is very talented, but they're not as I guess as crisp as the teams last year.
Okay.
You know what I mean? A little bit more explosive on offense as far as the plays, but they have a lot of lows as well too. So like they may hit you with a 75-yard bomb, and then they may go 3 and out 5 times in a row, and you're like, what is going on? And then they might hit you another 50-yard bomb, or they might run for a 70-yard run or whatnot. But then they might go 2 and out, and then they may throw an interception. So it's like the defense is still very, very good. It's just penalties. Penalties are the Bearcats' downfall this year. Last week, I think they had 14 penalties for a buck 30 roughly. On the road, you can't do that. And then the week before, they had probably their best penalized game. We only had like 4 for like 35, and that's like for a Luke Fickell team. As much as I love them, that's like greatness when you got under 5 penalties for them. But it just depends, man. Stopping the run is going to be interesting against you guys. For me, I think USF helped them get prepared for a running quarterback. They did play KJ, Jefferson early, but I knew they were ready for him just because of the name going against SEC team. If Ben makes those throws, they beat them by 2 touchdowns, and that sounds like a homerish thing. But if you watch that first half, trust me, you'll say the same thing. And that's not even like if you hate UC or not. Like if you watch that first half, you'd be like, dang, they should be up. And they weren't. So you can't go on the road and miss plays like that and think you're going to pull off the big.
Yeah.
So yeah, man. But I think this team is very talented, but they haven't played. Well, they did get to play in Arkansas, so that should help. But they haven't played an in-conference game as rough as they're going to play on Saturday. So that's going to be
because I was just thinking about then when we came on, I was last night I was thinking about that atmosphere in 2018, and that was about the loudest I have ever experienced at UCF. And that opening series, I think it started off with a delay of game and a false start the first 2 plays, and it was that was a crazy day. Game day came to town in the morning. We love night games down here. We don't want to play in the day. We definitely don't want to play at noon. We had an 8:00 game, so the fans were able to tailgate all day. They got liquored up. It was it was a good experience, and that was kind of peak UCF. And someone brought up for the beloved quarterback McKenzie Milton, arguably the greatest player in UCF history. That was his final home game. That was the final time he played at UCF, because he would go on the next week, suffered the gruesome leg injury at South Florida, and he transferred to Florida State and played for the Noles a little bit, but he never suited up and played in a UCF uniform again. So that for some, that's the game that people always run. I've been running a slideshow from that game, if you've noticed here on the screen, that, man. I saw the last few minutes. But so everyone's excited about this one. How would you kind of assess quarterback Ben Bryant to this point? This is an interesting one, because I don't know how often this has happened, if ever. He's recruited to Cincinnati. All right, he's recruited by Luke Fickell, right? So he's like the backup to Desmond Ridder.
Yes.
And so he decides, obviously Desmond Ridder's the quarterback. He's not going to play. So he uses the transfer portal. He transfers prior to 2021, he transfers to Eastern Michigan. So last season, he's the starter at Eastern Michigan. I think throws for like 3,000 yards. I know Eastern Michigan's kind of been a terrible football team in the MAC through the years. He leads them to a bowl game. Yep. And then I guess because he's a graduate, you can transfer again, even though maybe he already used up his 1 transfer, but you can transfer again if you've graduated. So he transfers back to Cincinnati, And now he's the starter at Cincinnati where he started. So that's kind of crazy. But tell us a little about Ben Bryant. Is he performing to expectations? Has he been hot and cold, inconsistent, doing well the entire season? How would you kind of assess his play to this point?
Cool, man. Yeah, it's crazy. So we joked about this, just like talking amongst people. Like they send them to the minor leagues to come back for a year or whatever, just to iron some stuff out.
You can send someone down to the G League or the minor league. They can do. I know that's crazy because I don't even know how, especially with a position like quarterback.
But it was crazy. So like, before I get into how he's doing this year, when he was in the transfer portal, he's like one of the only people that I've known that has been literally in the transfer portal and has still been on the depth chart. So the year before he leaves, right? He announced he was in the transfer portal like early in the season, and he still.
So this was like this was 2020.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes, before he transferred out, and he still was the backup.
So he was still suiting up, and I don't know.
Suiting up.
Okay, interesting. Usually when you're in the portal, you're just, you're out of here.
Right? You're done. You're just, hey, you can come work out, maybe get out of the way, right?
So it was obviously Luke. I mean, it's pretty clear. Obviously, they had the blessing. They said, you need to do what you need to do. Desmond's our quarterback. So there was no love lost. It was,
He was there until the end of the season. Like they never let him. Like he literally, if Desmond Ridder would have got hurt, he would have played in the game. Okay. No ifs, ands, or buts. No ifs, ands, or buts. So then he left. He comes back, and then he's been, I would say, up and down. He's had some very big highs, and he's had some lows where they stall out. Where I think he misses a few, but he does make very explosive plays, and when he's on, he can deal with the best of them. But he's not as athletic as a Dez, so stuff breaks down. What he's going to do with his legs is going to be minimal, and he's very tough, and sometimes he's like tough to a fault. So he'll take a hit he shouldn't take on a scramble because he's trying to fight for more yards when he should just get down. But I mean, when he's on, man, he can carve up any defense. When he's off, it can get interesting just because it stalls the offense out, and it just it's not pretty. But
yeah,
overall, like I would think satisfaction. Everybody thinks he's doing solid. Like nobody, when he's on, everybody loves him. When he's off, they're like, come on. But
what else? That's pretty much the story. That's the story with quarterbacks. So who are some of the just to maybe name drop a couple more guys? I know obviously guys went to the draft last year, receiver and some guys, but you got some new guys coming in. Who are some of the other guys on offense that are kind of the playmakers, or, fans are definitely going to know their names. I know Tyler Scott, was he dealing some injuries, or just kind of tell me about some of the couple other offensive guys and who to pay attention to.
Yeah. Tyler Scott got injured, and I want to say in the second quarter in that USF game. And it's the only game he's like not had any stats. And I think he had a touchdown, like a 50-yard touchdown, but a penalty took it back, essentially, in the first quarter, if I'm not mistaken. But that's the only game he didn't do numbers. And he didn't play against SMU, but it looks like he's on track to play against you guys. But he's killing it. Trey Tucker, senior slot receiver, is doing very well himself, big playmaker. The other guys have stepped up, especially with with Tyler not playing, like the last 6 quarters. But if Tyler Scott is there, he's like the security blanket for Ben Bryant. So if Ben has Tyler, he's normally going to hit that play. So it's going to be key for you guys to know where 21 is, because if you don't, and if you blink for a second, he's going to go right by you. He's probably one of the fastest guys in college football, and he's shifty as heck. So he's key. I think he practiced on Tuesday, looked good. So barring any step backs, you guys will have to worry about him, number 21. And then running game too. I'll go into the running game, but Charles McCullough, he's a senior, dealt with a lot of injuries.
He's got a couple ACLs, right?
Yeah,
he's coming. Were they in both knees, or do you remember? Were they the same knee, or
no, both? He hurt. Freshman year, he hurt I don't know which one. He hurt one of his knees. And I want to say not last year before, he messed up his other knee. So that's a great story. Just the fact that he's not only back, but he's making plays, and he's your starter. He's your leading rusher, right? So second in AAC in rushing.
Good for him.
Crazy.
Yeah.
So him, and then we got Corey Kiner. He transferred in from LSU, hometown guy. Was down to LSU and UC when he first not transferred, but when he first committed. Coach O, of course, was the man there when he did commit, and then with Brian Kelly there, I don't think they ever hit it off, just from what I've heard. And he dipped and came back, and he's had a nice year too. He missed one game with a hand injury, but he's back, so that's giving him a little bit more depth. And he's just a bowling ball. So those two are the guys.
Okay. Well, let's talk a little bit about Ivan Pace Jr. He's the linebacker. He's originally from Cincinnati, but went to Miami University coming out of high school. And I think he was Miami's leading tackler last year. I think he was all MAC.
Yep.
So obviously was established himself. He gets in the portal. And I know he was a highly recruited player, but he's going to stay in the hometown, and he transfers to Cincinnati, but he's got a brother that was already on the team, right? So there was some connections there. So just tell me a little bit about him, how he kind of got back to Cincinnati. Was he a guy kind of overlooked when he was coming out of high school, and just, what kind of impact? Isn't he the nation's sack leader right now?
I want to say so. I think I know, like, maybe the most tackles for loss as well.
Yeah.
But he essentially he was under recruited in high school.
Okay.
So his brother
is he a smaller guy? Is he like maybe short or something
shorter?
Like that?
He's stocky. So like
okay.
He's a bowler. He's legitimately a bowling ball.
Okay.
In pass.
Okay.
So they I think he might have lost 30 pounds since he's come to UC.
Okay.
And he's still probably 240. So last year when he was the defensive player of the year in the MAC, he might have been 270, something around there, playing middle linebacker and outside. And he's like 6 foot. You know what I mean? So his specs don't look the greatest when you see somebody.
Right.
But when you put on pads, stuff you can't measure is the stuff he does on the field. Runs people over. He's going to track you down. He can do anything. He can make plays in the passing game. He's going to make it in the running game. He's going to eat up your blockers. Like he can do anything you want a defensive player to do on the field. And it's amazing to see. But he was just under recruited, man. Just one of those guys that people didn't know his heart or what kind of work ethic he had and what kind of skill. Some people, you might have a guy that's 6'6", 275. He looks like the best defensive end God's ever created, right? And then he goes out there and he plays like my 8-year-old son. You know what I'm saying? Right? It's just how it is. Where this guy doesn't look the specs, and you look at him, you're like, he doesn't fit what my middle linebacker should look like or my outside linebacker should look like, right? But when you put on pads, you're like, dude, this is the best player on the field. And I don't care what team you're playing against right now. He's essentially, even if you play against a Bama or somebody, he might look like the top 3 on the field because of how impactful he is. And that's what kind of impact or imprint he makes on the game, man. He's just a hell of a player.
Yeah. So we've just talked about portal guys, really. He's a portal guy. I don't know if Ben Bryant really counts as a portal. Kind of a portal. He was, but he wasn't. You know what I mean? But how big is the portal been, though, for Cincinnati? It feels like that they've got a lot of wins there. Fickell recruiting the portal. I mean, how would you kind of assess how has that helped, since he kind of reload? And has that been a positive, more than a negative, maybe than, in regards to like losing players?
Yeah, man. I think they've used the portal very well, and they've hit on people that fit their culture, and that's been the win. Because you think about it, Nick Martiner comes from Hawaii, almost 1,000-yard receiver, had multiple touchdowns. He doesn't have as big of a role, but that just shows how much talent the Bearcats have at the receiver room. But he's still making his impact this year, especially in the red zone. Dude's a monster. And it's almost criminal how he's getting underused, but they have so much talent, you have to rotate people in and out. He's a portal guy, comes in, fits in, don't hear him making a fuss. He just goes out there and makes plays when you need him to. Pace, and then the thing was, he went to the portal, he wasn't under recruited anymore. Like the big boys wanted him. It's just that I think his brother being there, I think was icing on the cake for him.
Yeah.
So I'm glad he did come because you see what he's doing. It's been a joy to cover him. And then, the kicker, the Bearcats kicker, Ryan Cole, is from the portal. He played for Delaware last year.
Okay.
And, kicking was dicey last year for the Bearcats. And then it's crazy because he started off a little dicey this year, but then, last 2 games, he stepped it up. he was a savior for them last week, going 5 or 6. One of them got blocked, but he made a 52-yarder, I think, in a 44 or something like that. Like, it's just something that the Bearcats probably wouldn't have attempted last year, especially at 52, unless it was at the end of the half and it was kind of like, all right, let's get in before halftime. I don't think he attempts that, especially at the end of the game. He probably just tries to throw a Hail Mary and see what happens. So I think that's been helping them. Portal, I mean, they got defensive end from Ohio State, Noah Potter, who's been a part of rotation first year. So I think the portal has really helped them. It's been good to them. I think it's helped them more than it's hurt them.
Yeah. Anyway, we just, to name drop a couple more defensive guys. Obviously, we talked a lot about Ivan Pace Jr., who's maybe who are maybe another name, maybe another 2 names or so on guys on defense that are playmakers or guys you definitely got to watch. Guys maybe that might get pro looks, or who are some of the up and coming guys? I know there were some guys lost on that side of the ball, but are there some other guys besides Ivan Pace that are kind of like the top defensive players?
For sure, man. I'll be generic. I'll give you a couple. I'll give you a couple on the line. Maybe go ahead and sprinkle some on it in the secondary for you. But Dante Corleone has probably one of the coolest names.
That's a great name.
Great name. Redshirt freshman, right? Him, and it's cool. It's crazy because him, Deshaun Pace, Ivan Pace, Javon Hicks, who's the starting safety, Eric Phillips, who's a starting defensive end. They all went to the same high school in Cincinnati.
Okay, was that Colerain?
Colerain, yes.
Colerain,
they all went to the same high school, right?
Okay, cool.
And people were thinking, Corleone, he will be a part of rotation, but now, like, he's not even a starter, but dude is a monster. Like, he's great. He's been playing his butt off. I think PFF has him ranked as like the 4th highest rated defensive player in college right now. And you can take that for a grain of salt if you like PFF or not. But
I look at that every week, and sometimes they know what they're talking about. Then you're like, man, I don't know what game they watch.
Yeah, exactly. But when you're trying to talk about good stuff, and when good stuff is showing the numbers, I'll roll with it, right? But sometimes you're like, man, I don't know about that number, right? But that's neither here nor there. And I got some friends that talk about it, but we won't do that. It won't bad.
I got you.
But yeah, he's been playing amazing. And if he passes the eyeball test, Jawan Briggs, who is the starter at nose guard, is probably one of the strongest guys you'll ever see in your life. Like I've seen him pancake grown men, and it's like crazy. Like, you have to it's so normal. People aren't even shocked when it happens. That's how strong this man is. So that's who is in front of Dante. But then you go to the back end, and you lose Kobe Bryant, you lose Sauce Gardner, you lose Brian Cook. All these guys drafted in the NFL. And the guy that I think has surprised me the most is Jaquan Shepard. And he's been a guy that could have possibly been a part of the transfer portal on the outside, because he was stuck behind Sauce Gardner for all these years. Looks built like him. Maybe he's a little bit thicker, but he's 6'2", 6'3", very long, rangy. Got some playing time in the blowout games, but he wasn't as – but then he didn't really flash. So, but this year, the dude has been making plays. Like, I don't know if he has any picks this year. I don't got my stats in front of me, but he's always around the ball. He makes the play in the run game, and he looks like 10 times better player right now. So he's a guy, and he's from Florida too. So he's a guy
this is going to be a big game for him coming back home to Florida.
For him, I think he's going to want to try to show out, and I'm pretty sure he has friends on this team. So I think you're going to get the best number 5.
Yeah, we'll kind of end things here, but kind of just wrapping up this matchup. But how do you think fans feel about this weekend? Cincinnati fans, like, how would they characterize this game? Are they nervous? Are they maybe a little bit more confident when they were watching that UCF Temple game and saw the offense put up 70 points, and then they see the offense stink it up against East? Maybe they're feeling a little bit better now. I know Cincinnati and didn't exactly blow the doors off against SMU last week. I mean, it's a road game, it's a win. That's all that matters. But how are Cincinnati fans feeling? Are they kind of nervous, or they remember maybe 2018 atmosphere and they're kind of wondering what team they'll see?
Yeah, it's a roller coaster. Like, it depends on who you talk to. Like, some people are like, we're fine, right? And some people are like, I don't know, this is one of those games. But it's interesting, man. Just depends on who you got. Some people like right on the right on the highway white line, right before they cross lanes, and then you got some people who are like, I don't know, this game is scaring the living ish out of me, right? And then you got some that are like, nah, man, in Fickell we trust, and it's gonna work out.
Yeah.
But
so is this a rivalry? I mean, I know it is to a degree conference rivalry in terms of the two teams that have been at the top of the league. UCF was obviously there 17 and 18. Cincinnati's obviously snatched that back, and they're the class of the league right now. UCF wants to get back there. Both teams are going to go in the Big 12. So there is somewhat of a rivalry there, just because I don't know how many teams, obviously UCF's got the regional rivalry with South Florida, but how do Cincinnati people feel about UCF? Is this a rivalry? Is it just kind of a rivalry? Did they get more excited about UCF? How would you kind of characterize that aspect of the matchup?
I would say this is a rivalry, and it's because of, you guys were at, high point, right? And then we were, when Fickell got here, chasing you guys, chase, finally catches you in 19. All right. 20, handle business. 21, they handle business. Almost kind of reverse of what happened in 17, right. In 21.
Right. But tables have been, tables have turned.
Right?
Yeah.
Tables turned, like, I got the gun now, right? So, but in general, I think it's a rivalry because this year I think we're very close in talent on both sides. Like, this is a coin flip game. You could tell by Vegas who plays the cleanest, who does what they are supposed to do will win this game. And that's what's going to happen no matter what. I figure that no matter what. But just how the fans interact with each other online, that's what makes it a rivalry. Because if Tulsa plays the Bearcats toughest all the time, like no matter what, they play them tough for the most part. And you don't have
you found any Tulsa fans on Twitter though? I mean,
no, man. I think she covers Oklahoma State now. But like one of their beat writers, their main beat writer, the one I found, like she was on my podcast not last year, year before when they were in the AAC championship. And and that's all we had, man. Like it wasn't, you talked to her and that was about it. Like it was nobody else like trying to threaten you or say you're stupid or calling your site dumb. Like nothing. Like come on, like give me something, right?
But, and both teams are going now. UCF and going to the Big 12. So I would imagine this game would continue on an annual basis. We await the schedule. I think they say December is when we're going to find out the schedule for next year in the Big 12 and everything. But West Virginia, I know that's obviously going to be the most geographically convenient team to Cincinnati. There's some Big East history there. Was there a rivalry there? Do you see that developing into one, or is it just one of those things where, it's only like a 5-hour drive, so that's a little bit more convenient, but what would you say about that?
It will. People
they call it, that's the tri-state. Don't they call it the tri-state with like West Virginia, Ohio, Kentucky? But
it's Indiana. It's Indiana.
Indiana's more the tri-state when you talk about. Okay, that's okay.
Yeah,
never mind.
We're like, especially where we're on the
you're on the western edge of Ohio.
We're southwest. So we're like, you could take a couple exits and you're going to be in Indiana. No, Kentucky. You could take a couple exits west. You're going to be in Indiana. So if you go south a couple exits, you're going to just accidentally cross the bridge and be in Kentucky.
Right.
You go west a couple exits, you're going to be in Indiana. So that's our tri-state. But West Virginia, I don't know, because they have like Bob Huggins, who's like who is.
Oh, yeah. He's Cincinnati basketball,
legend,
really.
Legend.
Yeah.
So the reason why the school has such a good profile now, but at the same time, Hugs is getting old. So I don't think it's going to hold the same weight. Like if Hugs if this was 10 years ago, that would be our rival automatically because Hugs is there. But Hugs is, still the man. We love him to death, but he's on his way out. He's got more years. He's on the back end of his career, not the front end. So I think that's going to, unless we start having recruiting wars, I don't think that's going to be that school. I think you guys will still, as long as we play each other enough, I think we will still have that button.
Even though, I don't really know any Cincinnati fans, down here in Florida, and you probably don't know UCF fans in Cincinnati, but we're similar schools, I feel like, just in terms of we've always kind of had a chip on our shoulder and kind of, we're in a city where, you're kind of fighting for attention at times.
Yeah.
I know obviously it's a big pro city in Cincinnati. You got Ohio State down the road.
Yep.
UCF fans have kind of grown up in the shadow of some of the other universities in the state. And we're both kind of hitting our stride and kind of, reaching the big time right now. So I feel like we have more. And honestly, now I'm selling myself more on the rivalry than maybe I did when I asked the question. I feel like we're the two most similar schools. Houston is kind of there a little bit, like UCF and Cincinnati. But yeah, I'm buying in. I do think this is a rivalry, and it'll only continue to grow as long as it, as an annual game, hopefully in the future Big 12.
For sure. No, it's a rivalry, man, because it's because they've both been the measuring sticks for each other. So like if Memphis snuck in there that one year, that was pretty good, but I feel like you guys might have won that game, right?
Yeah.
I'm not sure. Yeah, I feel like you guys won it. So I think
there was UCF played Memphis in back-to-back conference championship games in 17 and 18. Didn't Memphis beat you guys in 2019? Or what was that? 2019, who was in that championship game?
Yes, it was 2019.
Yeah.
2019, that's the year Memphis was. So Memphis snuck in there, but nobody snuck in that 1 year.
Since. Yeah. Memphis will be the only team, maybe Temple. Temple won the AAC in 2016. So other than Temple and Memphis, those will be the only teams that won the AAC besides the 3 teams going to the Big 12. So.
It's crazy.
Yeah.
It's crazy.
Well, man, JT, man, I've loved this conversation. I've had a good time. I know it's late. I know you got a day job in the morning and stuff, but I really appreciate you coming on and talking some UC football. I'm excited about this game. I know you are too. I know the fan bases are. It's going to be a lot of fun on Saturday, and I can't wait to talk to you again. Maybe this time next year, or whatever this next match. Maybe we'll talk some hoops or something next spring or something.
Yeah, man. You can talk hoops, man. I know you guys are a little rough. I've been hearing.
Yeah, we'll see. I don't know. We got there's some transfers, and there's some guy we had media day yesterday, and they're like, last year we had a bunch of media. I'm paraphrasing what they meant, but they're kind of saying some guys on last year's team maybe weren't the best. They're individual type players, and this is more like a team. We'll see. I think we're going to be pleasantly surprised. I don't think UCF's going to win the conference, but I think we'll be pleasantly surprised by what we see in the court this year. Big 12 might be a little rough. They're going to have to recruit a little bit better. But anyway, my man JT, this has been fun. I've enjoyed it. Thank you very much for joining me, and I will see you again soon.
All right, man. I appreciate it, man.
Take care.
All right.